What is the title of the talk? How to achieve non-dual state. That's a clickbait, eh? How to achieve a non-dual state. And then I say, there is no such thing as a non-dual state. There are states which are always dualistic. So I suspect what the question is asking is how to experience non-duality. Non-duality is always being experienced. It's just a person that believes that it can experience non-duality and lose non-duality. What is a person? I mean, that's a really abstract idea, a person. So in this moment, there is thoughts of feeling rising, there is sensations arising, there's feelings rising, and there's also this entity that's claiming to be an experiencer. But you can see, there can be a noticing that all of that is being experienced by something. So the appearance of the thoughts, the appearance of the sensations, the appearance of the feelings, and the appearance of that belief that that's you. So this energy that attaches into it. So all of that is being experienced by something. And what is it that's experiencing that? And that never leaves. You could say it's consciousness, but in a way, the consciousness and it's kind of like a bridge between nothing and everything. Something even deeper than consciousness. But it's okay to start with consciousness, to recognize that there is something that's conscious of the person, conscious of the thoughts, conscious of the feelings, conscious of the room, conscious of the floor, the computer, the sounds, the humming, my voice, my face. And that isn't personal. That exists beyond the personal. And so what the person does is the person then comes in and thinks, I experience consciousness, I know consciousness, I know myself. And then it claims something, and then it thinks that it gets it and loses it. So when it has this realization of consciousness of being present, there's normally like a bliss or an openness that comes with it. So then it thinks that's it. So then it seeks for this bliss or this openness. And that's actually just an experience that's appearing. That's not actually it. So this consciousness is experiencing now. Not just in Lisa, like everybody's got equal amounts of that consciousness. Everybody is conscious, you're not in deep sleep. Deep sleep is here as well, but there's also awakeness. And deep sleep is that no-thingness. But there's also this awakeness. just recognise, it's not even you recognising, that, I mean, it's an appearance of you recognised, so the appearance of you that recognises that there is something that knows that it's existing. There's also something that knows the attention is being moved. So often teachers put the attention back in consciousness, which is really beautiful practice, but just notice there's something that's registering it. So that which is doing it can't be it. Sometimes people believe that that registering is it. So there's something else here. And to me, what waking up is a shift from being that personal to the impersonal. But to me, it doesn't mean the end of the character. So there's still a character that is appearing in that. And there can be, but sometimes I say it like that there is identification with the character, and in a way, there has to be a certain amount of identification with the character, and it sort of goes in and out of focus. Like if there's absolutely no identification with the character, then you're just totally boundless freedom. But it's kind of impossible to function on a human level. It's so free. It's this like absolute love and absolute mystery. And this freedom doesn't seem to require the character to be anything. So the character could have very low empathy, or maybe even no empathy. Or the character could have lots of empathy. The character could be really giving and generous, or the character could be stingy and grumpy. It doesn't seem to be dependent on what the character is. There does seem to be a letting go of the character that happens. Like, so there's some form of collapse, and this end to seeking, like seeking for freedom and time, but it doesn't mean that the character stops moving towards its wants and avoiding its pain, but it stops seeking those dynamics or those polarities. All suffering comes from this attachment to time being a freedom, but it's not even conscious, because in order to know things, you have to tell yourself stories about things now. So you have to tell yourself stories about who you are or what you are. Your actual essence is awakeness. So your essence is consciousness, but it's also innocent consciousness. It's not knowing. So in your pure state, you kind of, there is perception of things, but they're not known intellectually. And this is the end of separation. So there is camera, there is computer, there is light, but none of them are known as a word. They're just known as what they are in the pureness of the moment, and there isn't a separation or a distinguishment between things or objects. It's all one energy moving. And when we have this mind that can know and determine things, that can say, that is light, that is computer, and that one is the one that determines the story you tell yourself about yourself. So you can't necessarily know you're seeking unless you've got a story that says, I am seeking or I am not seeking. This is why so many non-duality teachers have different ways of describing this message and different ways of describing their current experience. Like really, nobody can know if they're enlightened or not. You can only kind of compare on the human level to a story that you've had in the past, to what it was, to what it is now. You can't really know that you're free or not free, because who would know that? You can tell stories about it, but this is where the mistakes all begin to lie, including myself. Like over the 10 years of teaching now, I can see that in the human character, on the story level, there was like arrogance in that story. Like I can, and lack of humility, like lack of empathy at points. There were like all different things in this story, but it's not like it was wrong. It's just what happens when a character arises, is that you form stories about your world and about your experience, but they're never true. They're just depicting what's seemingly happening. You can't actually depict your experience. So if you say one thing about yourself one day, you can't, it's not truth. The reason that we have consecutive stories and stories that make sense is so that we can interrelate as humans and have like a collective society, like a collective reality, in order to trade together and to function. But it's not actually really depicting what's happening. It's depicting what suits it and what its current up-to-date conditioning and thoughts are, and it's really impersonal. Like the fact that my character has had arrogance in the past, and still most probably, and still definitely has arrogance now, like the fact that that happened, like the fact that that appears, it's not anybody's fault. Like there isn't a Lisa here whose fault that can be. It's like a machine operating, producing particular thoughts about scenarios. So if I tell you that all suffering comes from seeking, it's totally down to God's will as to whether that body-mind produces those thoughts, so your body-mind produces those thoughts and kind of has a similar thought process as Lisa and sort of understands that on some level. But there isn't actually a solid person that understands that. So if you bump your head and get amnesia in like 5 years, you might forget that. So it's not inherently yours, and it's not inherent to awakening either, because you could like have awakening before you get amnesia, and then there's still that freedom, that shift thereafter, but you might not have any language or any idea what it is anymore. Isn't that crazy? It's so free, it's so impersonal, this. So whatever your character or my character does, like in my expression, in having arrogance, in kind of insinuating to others and playing a story that I was free, like that is nonsense in the end. That isn't true in the end. And most probably I said that many times, like this is no revelation, but it can't be true for anybody, not just for Lisa. And like even on my website, like I tell a story about my awakening of a before and after, but if I were to have a head bump, I would forget that maybe. But it doesn't mean that there's not that connection to source. But I wouldn't be able to talk about a before and after anymore. There would just be like freedom, and that's all I was. And then I would be like, And then maybe somebody would tell me about that and I'd be able to recall that story. But really, it's all irrelevant. It's all noise going on. And there is nobody that awakens. That's such arrogance to believe that there is somebody that awakens. Who would awaken? Who are you right now? You're this vast freedom that's connected to all, but has no personality. The personality is something that arises in it, just like the wind. Or just like a plastic bag in the wind. The plastic bag's like, I am the wind, or I am a jellyfish, swimming around in the sea. But none of it is personal. Personal. Even this seeking story that I tell again and again and again about like that seeking, like what creates the personality and what creates the suffering is seeking, even that is simply a story. So a lot of people in Buddhism or non-duality like relate to that story because it's like talked about so much. And it does seem to be that it's a collapse in seeking in the future, but even that is confined by words. And then who? There's just this beingness, this presence, this radical aliveness that's totally impersonal, and whatever happens on the human level isn't your doing, it isn't somebody's doing, it's simply a happening. It's so incredibly impersonal. So every sin that you've done, every saint-like thing that you've done is not yours, it's just a happening through that body. Every element of your life which you fucked up or which you've done amazingly isn't yours. It couldn't be any different. You're not that person. It's like calling the tree you. It's like calling the room you. I know on a psychological level that sounds really disturbed. Like, so there's an appearance of the character, and the character needs to appear as if it's real in order to function in this society, but it's not you. Khaleesi doesn't walk around telling a taught story of who she is. She's like, I'm from Thailand, I was abandoned as a child, and Lisa saved me, but even she didn't want me in the beginning. I can be grumpy, I can be fierce, I'm strong. She doesn't walk around telling herself all these tales and then she's like, yes, and I'm going to get enlightened, or I am enlightened, or I have been enlightened, or I've always been enlightened, or I'm the most enlightened teacher there is on the whole planet, and my teaching is better than their teaching. That dog over there is speaking bollocks, and I'm the only one that's speaking the right teaching. Like, to her, like, she just doesn't care. There's not even a her that doesn't care. There is impulses, urges arising, and her body's traumatized, so we can talk about the fact that she can be scared and she can respond to an aggression if she gets afraid. But that's not her, that's a condition of the body. So sometimes I work with people on the human level with the chakras and with the body, but it's not personal, it's not you, it's not an entity, it's a happening that the body responds to, and then it creates a lot of suffering, and then there's a lot of identification with that suffering. And then you really believe that the suffering is you, that you're a bad person, or that you're unlovable. But there is no you. Who is this you? Who? Who let the dogs out? Who? Who? Who let the dogs out? Who? Khaleesi is blissing out on the sofa, absolutely asleep. Absolutely conked out asleep. Keep trying to engage her every so often. I'm like, oh, Khaleesi. Oh, I did. Hello. I'm sorry to have woken you. Now I feel a little mean. But who is it that feels mean in the end? Who? It's just a thing that's coming. It's like arising out of this mouth and then this eye, but there is no eye. There is no eye. There's nobody gets enlightened. Nobody. And you will never, ever, ever find freedom in time. You'll never find freedom tomorrow. It's only here when there is this shift, when it's seen that you aren't that person. And it's so impersonal that who you are is always this source, this energy of awakeness. And this energy of awakeness is empty on one side. It's empty beyond your wildest dreams. You can't even imagine how empty it is, because any imagining you have is a thing that's empty. And it's awake. There's this I am, there's this amness, this sense of being. It's empty and awake simultaneously. Empty and awake simultaneously. Oh, God on high. Sorry, I don't have a good singing voice. It just came out. It's not me doing it, it just came out. Who is this you? Who? My mind is always like telling its story of itself. Me. Who is this story of you? I just have to check that everything's working. I can get this thought. Hello, the microphone is working. The stream is working. Lisa is working. I'm as impersonal as the computer. And so are you. You are not this person. And everything you want and everything you dream about is all bullshit. This can make the human more steady and the human more happy and the life more easy, but it's all bullshit. You're never going to get happy through having money, through having possessions. Like, if you take the money, I was thinking about this the other day, and more than likely I then was going to forget about these thoughts that I had, but I think I'm just in the place in between where I can still remember it. So I was thinking about money and the curse of having a lot of money. I speak with quite a lot of people with a lot of money. Maybe it's because they have a lot of money, they can contemplate these ideas. Like Ramesh Balsekar always used to say that when people are in poverty, they can't think about their existence. So it's only when people have a relative amount of comfort that they can think about the nature of reality. So like Westerners, because Western society is quite stable now, they tend to be more interested in this than people in India that are like scraping by for survival. Okay, so say if we had 150 people. So there was a room, a town hall of 150 people, and that was all that existed in your world. There weren't more people than 150. So at the moment, we've got so many people in this planet, like you can kind of disappear in it. But imagine if there were only 150 people in your group, and you knew everybody by name. And the way in which you survived was that you all helped each other out, and you all exchanged resources. And then over the years, one of the people became very good at collecting the resources, and other people weren't so good at it, so they didn't collect so many resources. But that one person didn't share the resources with the other 149. It kept building and building and building. And then eventually it had like massive mounds of resources in its house, and everybody else in the environment was really struggling, because firstly that person had taken a lot of the resources from that environment, and they just weren't as good as that one person was that collects the resources. And the way that we think in our mentality is that because they did well and because they were successful at collecting resources, they deserve it. We kind of think this in our society, but it's kind of, that's what we're told on the more conscious level, but maybe unconsciously our body doesn't think that. So then say you're back to your 150 people, and this person that's really good at it doesn't share, even though the other people are beginning to starve and the other people are really struggling. And that one that is really good has lots of food and can look after themselves, so they can keep on mining for resources. So their stock, their stash keeps growing and everyone else's gets smaller and smaller. Eventually what's going to happen is there's going to be a rebellion against that one person with all the resources. So what that person might do, that one person with all the resources, is they buy some of the locals. So they kind of say, okay, I'll share my resources with you, but you have to protect me from everybody else. They kind of bring some people on board, but then they exclude the others. And just think about that, like reflect on that, like have empathy for all those situations. It's not that the person with all the resources is bad. Like that's the simplistic conclusion. It's not that they're bad. They're not the baddie in that scenario. It's not the people that are rebelling against that one person that has all the resources that are bad. It's just like looking at it, like looking at the catch-22 of the scenario, is that when we all mine for our resources independently, there's going to be ones that achieve more. But eventually what will happen in that group is there will be a civil war, even amongst 150 people. I'm not laughing at them, I'm just laughing at the scenario of it, because as those others begin to starve and go into decay, they'll fight and try to get the resources of the one that's hoarded it all up. But the one that's hoarded it all up feels like it's rightly mine, like I put all this work into it, I thought about it. If you had saved more, if you hadn't been so lazy, if you hadn't been all these things, then you would have got resources yourself. So then there is this war between these two different fractions. So in the end, our society can't work, because this is always what's going to happen. Like, our society can't work the way it is. It does work because people die out over time and the resources get moved around enough for people to kind of like have some relative peace. But it can't really work. It's always going to be, and we kind of like have this really naive idea as seekers and as the spiritual community that if we all become enlightened, then that will be the end of it. I kind of get the impression that if we all wake up, then society would be based on trust, which would be a different thing rather than hoarding our resources independently. But currently, it can't work. So if you do really successful in this society, what happens to you is you then have to guard your money against everyone else. The people from the bottom, so if you've never been really successful in this society, you don't really understand it. But if you begin to go up to the top, you have to begin to guard your resources about other people that want it. And it's so natural that other people are going to want it. They're not bad. That's blame. That's like the simplistic way of seeing it. It's just natural that they're going to want the resources. Of course you're going to want to feed your loved ones and to feed yourself. And we think that like everyone has this idea that money, like gaining all these resources, is the end to all our problems. But it's not. It's not the end to the problems. Like if you look at really rich people, especially people that everybody knows is rich, they're always battling off people trying to take their resources. Like as soon as you get a certain amount of wealth, particularly in places like America, where it is more open to suing, then you begin to get people suing you, like finding problems with what you do, but you don't really see this. when you've not got lots of resources. But then when you get lots of resources, it's like a battle to keep those resources. The tax man comes for it. The people sue you. Like, so if you have an accident and they find out, they'll sue you, or a lawyer will come to them thinking, let's sue them. You deal with people on a day-to-day basis asking you for money. Like, so people think, oh, they're rich, I'll go and ask them. So you're constantly dealing with that. And then if you don't give those people money, they begin to hate you or spread gossip about you. Like, what a stingy person that person is. But they don't know that everybody's asking that person for money. There's so many complications, and then you put your money in the stock market, which then means you maybe invest in human rights atrocities. Like, who knows when you put your money in the stock market what you're investing in? Like, your money might be you might be making money off of like gold or something, which is terrible cruelty for people. So then you've got that problem. Like, then if you invest your money, if you begin to put it in different places, is there an ethical way to do it? And really, it's not easy to do it ethically. So it's never going to work, this resource thing, but it's the biggest carrot that keeps people going. But if I can get enough resources, I will then be happy. I can do this or that. Then you'll be bored. Collecting resources gives you something to do during the day, even if you sometimes don't like doing it, you kind of have to do it, so it pushes you into it. But then you don't have to collect resources every day. Then you think, oh, I can be creative, but there's not such a motivation to do it, and then you can like become bored or depressed or have apathy towards it, not be able to maintain a routine to be creative. At least when you're going for resources, you have a job and you have to do things. When you don't, so then you get a lot of people that have lots of money and that don't have things to do turn to drugs or spirituality. But this is such a daydream for people. It's such an attachment to people. I have to have things. And this is what creates the you, because you then seek in stories to get things and to obtain things, and there is this focus on you, like what you're getting, what you're doing, what you have, what you don't have. Who is this you? Who are you? Who is this person that's going to obtain resources? Even when you have them, it's such an abstract thing that you have the money in the bank to save you from what? All these illusions that anything in time will bring you happiness. I can't say that like the character of Lisa is free of it. Like, I'm getting quite a lot better now. Like, I feel like the last 4 or 5 years has been good training for me. But when I get a big bill, it can be painful in the moment. But then in the end, like when you feel that feeling and you let it pass, like who cares? Like, who cares? Like, you're right here, right now. What is there to get or to not get here? Who is rich or poor here? Who is in debt or free here? Who? Okay, we go to questions. If there is any questions. So if you want me to call you, please say, call me. And I will call you. shut this. Shut this. Sorry if the sounds are not so good tonight. It's hopefully my microphone blocks it out, but my computer, I haven't got my fan on for my computer. I have a nice fan that sits underneath the computer, and I thought, it's fine tonight. It doesn't need it, but it does. It's quite a maneuver putting it in because, yeah, it's a little lazy. This is from Osborne. Hey Osborne. Hi Lisa. Thank you for your live broadcast. I just wanted to tell the people that there are now over 2,000 video clips to choose from in the archive playlist on the channel. I invite people to subscribe and give some likes if they like this video. If anyone is annoyed by YouTube ads, they can go to the Facebook clip page instead. Oh, thanks Osborne. So there is another channel. I sometimes forget to advertise this, but it's always my intention to do it. So there is my channel. So I only have one YouTube channel, and that's called Lisa Cairns, I think. Yeah, it's Lisa Cairns. And I do my live streams on there, and I don't edit the talks. I sometimes edit them if there's been a bit of a problem with them, but they're generally just the whole talk, and I do my live stream on there. And sometimes I add some extra videos, but most of the time it's just that. There is another gentleman called Osborne who does a channel called Lisa Cairns video clips, and he basically edits all the talks and puts them on YouTube, and he puts titles on them and puts different names on them. He also has a Facebook page as well, and he says that on the Facebook page there's no ads, it's only the ads on YouTube. Yeah, so you can go look into that. So it's called Lisa Cairns video clips, and if you look around in there, I'm sure you get the link to the Facebook page if you don't want to watch ads. It's kind of like the double bind with YouTube. I think you do better if you have ads, like they advertise you more. Like, because YouTube wants to make money from the ads too. So if you put on the ads, you actually do better on YouTube, I think. That's the way it is. But also, it's the way that a lot of people get paid as well. So I know that like YouTube is such an amazing resource, and it would be so amazing if people just donated and then there weren't ads. But the reality is that people don't think to donate, or it's just not in the mentality to donate, not just for my videos, but for any of the videos that you see on YouTube. So the way that people make money is through the advertisements. It's like a bit of bind, but it used to be something you could get called ad blocker for YouTube, which was amazing, but I think they managed to program that out. I don't put ads on my YouTube account. I have sometimes in the past had these little banners on there because YouTube wanted me to do it, but I don't do it because I can't be asked with the taxing stuff. I'm so lazy with this sort of stuff. Like, it requires like extra work for me with the paperwork. The less paperwork I can have for the taxing stuff, the better.